episode of the two-time Telly Award-winning podcast coming at you in the run-up to San Diego Comic-Con 2026. I am Rylan Grant, screenwriter, Ringo Award-winning creator of fine comics like The Jump and the official Evel Knievel comic book series, which can still be had on Kickstarter if you want to go over there. The other voice in the dark, the man in the box to the left, if you're watching us on YouTube, is...
David Avallone, writer, coffee achiever, 60-year-old man still drinking out of a Superman cup.
Wow, that's a great cup. I feel I got a lot of great cups in the office. That's really good. Yeah, I feel like maybe I should grab my Hulk Hogan and Andre the Giant cup, but it's probably pretty dirty right now.
I broke one while washing dishes a few months ago and went to replace it and then went, oh, I could buy the whole set.
Yeah.
Because eBay. So now I have a very good set of 1978 Superman the movie. Were they Pepsi? Yeah, Pepsi glasses.
Yeah, look them up online because I recently bought a Burger King in the 80s had a really great Muppets glass set, and I bought it for them, and they looked it up online and lead in the paint, so they were toxic.
Good to know.
They are great display items, some of them, but so yeah.
Yeah, I vaguely remember. I remember the discussion of them being leaded.
Yeah,
luckily the paint's on the outside, but yeah.
It was funny when we were. Oh yeah, I guess maybe you're holding them and maybe you're eating and all that stuff, but
yeah.
But we digress, as we tend to. We have been off the air for a good long while, working through life and career and all of these things. But it's good to be back. If you are going to be at San Diego Comic-Con 2026, we're recording this in the run-up to that. We are doing our now yearly Writer's Block meetup at the Bayfront Hilton Bar on Friday night. Fourth annual, yeah, and it's always a rollicking good time. There's always much drunkenness and chicanery and people tripping in with Eisners and all sorts of fun stuff. So make sure you get down there. Guests and listeners, welcome.
Yes.
Yeah. Absolutely. You got anything else to plug before we bring our esteemed guest in?
Anything else to plug? I mean, no. I mean, since I'm trying to remember. Have we really not recorded a new episode in the last year? I feel like it hasn't been. We've recorded more recently than that, but
yeah.
But yeah, I got a Patreon. I got a whole bunch of Dynamite comics out at the moment. I'm in the middle of the Altered States Warlords series, which is a crossover event with all sorts of kooky pulp characters from the early 20th century and also Red Sonja and Vampirella. Nice. So good, clean, wholesome, fun, and half-naked ladies, because, apparently they used to think it was very, 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 very warm on Mars. Wow. Which I don't know how you could think that with it being so much further from the sun than the Earth, but I guess Edgar Rice Burroughs there. Any excuse to have the ladies be naked was exciting for all the ERB.
It's red. It looks hot. I got hired on not one, but two movies in the last month. I didn't know if I was a screenwriter anymore. It's good to know that I still am, at least for another year or two. So a little stay of execution for the governor as far as my film business associations are concerned. But I'm excited about it. I can't talk about them right now, but it's two really fun, really interesting, really challenging movies to write, and so I'm in the bunker on those.
That's great.
Now, so hard to complain. Yeah.
Well, let us bring in our guest, Mr. Chris Mancini.
Hey, great to be here, guys.
How you doing?
Thanks for joining us. It's great to see you, Chris. Tell the kids at home a little bit about yourself.
Well, I've been in the entertainment industry for, trails off for many years. And I've been a comedian, a writer, a producer, and a comic book creator. And in about 10 years ago, I started a new company called White Cat Entertainment to focus on storytelling through comics, films, and podcasts.
And we should say right from the jump that Chris has wonderful book over on Kickstarter right now called Alpha Cat. If you go over to Kickstarter, we'll have a link in the show notes here. But if you go over to Kickstarter and you search Alpha Cat, it is Alpha Cat #2.
Yes.
But it is an all ages sci-fi romp that I highly recommend.
It's
great for
it's really fun. Yeah,
it's wonderful. Yeah.
It's also kind of like Starship Troopers with cats. So if that's also another way to describe it.
Which, I mean, right there, that's an improvement.
Yeah.
Right there, then that's an improvement. I would swap a cat for Casper Van Dien any day of the week. You know, I may be alone in that.
Let's not say anything we can't take back. All right.
All love to Casper.
Then what's the point of podcasting? Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly. But we wanted to get together, particularly in this moment, to talk a little bit about specifically San Diego Comic-Con. But I'd like to, I think it's good to talk about cons in general and what they mean, excuse me, to us and our involvement with them. And Chris, what's your origin story with going to conventions?
Okay, well, first, I'll preface by my memory is poor. I actually started the company 6 years ago, so I already got that wrong right out of the gate. It wasn't 10. But, it was interesting. I never really went to cons until I moved out to LA many years ago. And I was like, well, San Diego, it's like, and you'll get a pro badge because you're in entertainment. Just show your WGA card. I'm like, oh, well, what's this that everyone's talking about? So I went down there for the first time after I had moved to LA, and I'll tell you, it was like going into another world, and it was a mix of this is great, and I can't believe I've been missing this entire time. Like, I think I would have flown out for this had I known, when I was still back east. But I think it was the discovery of being there, and then I started doing more panels and being more involved in the community, along with both entertainment and the comic side. And it was just a gradual growth, but it really felt like a homecoming every time we would go there from year to year. Sure. And I remember when we first started, like when you guys have been going there probably even longer. And I remember going the first time, wow, it's kind of crowded. And then, of course, every year after that, it was like, well, this is insane. And but it hasn't stopped us from going. It was probably early 2000s was probably when I first started going. So it was at least, now this I know for sure, it was at least over 20 years ago. So
right,
yeah, I've definitely seen the increase.
And you were a fan of nerd stuff when you were a kid, right? You were a comics reader and all that.
Oh, absolutely. I grew up. I even remember the first comic book I ever read. It was a Spider-Man, and it had the rocket racer and the big wheel on the cover. And that was the first Spider-Man comic I ever got. I'm like, all right, well, now I'm hooked. I need to read these all the time. And I just would collect as much as I could. I would always do like a mix of like superhero, but also I loved like, the supernatural stuff like Hellboy and Sandman. I would always get into a lot of those. And I'll admit, like at that time, there wasn't a ton of indie comics, when I was reading, but every once in a while I would pick one up and be interested in it. But the quote indie comics were like Image, that's sure. That's where indie was. But, the way the industry is proliferated and indie comics have been supported and accessible now, it's things have definitely changed. And now, I like a little bit of everything now.
Mm-hmm. Rylan, what was your introduction to cons and to San Diego in particular?
Yeah. I mean, to cons in general. I mean, I think the first convention I went to was a Star Trek convention. There used to be an annual Star Trek convention at the Novi Civic Center, just outside Detroit. And it was,
I have been in the Novi Civic Center because that's where they have Motor City Comic Con.
Motor City Comic Con. There you go. Yeah. So same difference. And yeah, it was just it was interesting. I mean, it was harder to get a hold of stuff and to meet people that liked this stuff back then, right? And so you have an entire building full of people in Starfleet uniforms and people building props, and it was pretty magical. TV, comics. It was always an escape for me, growing up. I mean, the reality wasn't great, so I retreated into stories, and so it was cool to have some place where you could kind of commune with people who did similar things, and the act of going to the con itself was a way of kind of retreating into fandom, and so that was really interesting. And so I had gone to that and would kind of trip into a con here and trip into a con there. I started going to San Diego back in 2004. And I should say right off the bat that I've been to every San Diego Comic-Con but one since 2004. And then didn't go to the weird Thanksgiving one either. So but that's an outlier. I don't consider that a missed con. But I used to go I started going down for, there was a time in like the mid-aughts where it became a real like film business scene to go down there. And it was the funniest thing because it's like, well, there are all these execs, right? And it's like, have you been down to San Diego? Are you going down to San Diego? Let me know if you're going down to San Diego. We'll have a meeting. And it's like all these people that it's like, dude, I meet with you like, 5 times a year. Like, why do I have to drive down to San Diego and meet you in a coffee shop somewhere? But it became like very important to go down there. It became very important to have things to do when you went down there, to have meetings scheduled when you went down there. It was such a weird, stupid scene. And I avoided it for a little while, but my then writing partner and I went down, and the director Stephen Sommers, the guy that directed The Mummy, was going down to meet with Robert Kirkman about the possibility of doing a Walking Dead feature at Universal. This is before the TV show and everything. And so, Dick Renner and I went down there and we were kind of wrapped up in all of that. And there were meetings with Kirkman, and it was so interesting because Robert Kirkman now is like Robert Kirkman, right? He runs this huge company and he's created all of this amazing stuff. And back then he was like, an overweight, like schlubby guy with stains on his t-shirt and so
a Comic-Con guy.
Yeah, and so we had poured through these books, which were great, and we had met with him and had vibed with him, but Steven, the most important guy, and the Universal people who were going to be the ones cutting the checks, they just didn't see it. They weren't kind of moved by the meeting with Kirkman, and then they're looking at this thing and they're like, I don't understand. It's George Romero. Like, why don't let's just make a George Romero movie? And Dick Renner and I, like, we pushed hard on some stuff. We were like, no, like, you don't understand. This is doing it in a different way, and you could go this way with it. You could go that way with it. What if and they're like, nah, I don't see it. And then, and then a few years later, Walking Dead becomes Walking Dead. And, but that was my first trip down there. Just started going ever since. And then, at some point would go for film and TV business, and then would go for kind of fandom. And then at some point I what was it? 2008. I think I made my first one, or God, no, it wasn't 2008. Was it? How long ago? It wasn't until like 2018, I guess, that I made my first comic book and started going as professional, a comic professional. I was going as a film professional.
Right.
But I've had all these like phases, where go down there as a film guy, go down there and watch panels, then go down there and host and crew panels, and it's weird to look back.
Yeah, it's definitely an evolution. I mean, I think I probably may have started going to, I mean, I'm also older, but I think I may have started to go to cons younger. My first one, I might have been 13 or 14, even younger. And very much the bullied nerd at school, and very much like going to my first science fiction. Can't really remember if it was a science fiction con or a Star Trek con, but in the late 70s, a science fiction con was sort of a de facto Star Trek con, just because it was such the media that everyone was most excited about, even before the first movie got made. It was still like the first celebrity I ever met at a con. I walked into my very first con in upstate New Jersey, some Bergen County, and Walter Koenig walked up to me and said, "Do you know where the ballroom is?" And I had seen a sign, so I said, "It's just down that corridor." And he said, "Hey, thank you." And I said, "So, like, am I the assistant navigator now?" And he laughed. I did clock that his toupee was significantly less convincing than William Shatner's in person. And I say that with great love for Walter. I'm friends with his daughter Danielle, who's a terrific actress comedian. But that was
So
my
it's-
first.
Well, I was
Go
going to
ahead.
say, it sounds like for science fiction, like until Star Wars was 77, like everything was
Yeah.
focused on Star Trek.
It was. I mean, even it was still pretty focused on Star Trek even after Star Wars, honestly. And I also remember, my dad was a writer, and this has stuck out in my mind. In 76, Charlie Lippincott and my now friend Craig Miller were running around trying to get science fiction fans interested in Star Wars for Lucasfilm. I think Craig was officially Lucasfilm's guy, and Lippincott might have been 20th Century Fox's guy, but might be wrong about that. And I remember my dad going to one of these as a guest because he had written the novelization of Beneath the Planet of the Apes. He had some sci-fi cred and a ton of pulp fiction cred. And he came home and handed me, I didn't go with him for whatever reasons. I think I might have had school or something. But I remember him handing me this sheet of white, what we would have called ditto paper in the period. And it was a Xerox of a sheet that had picture of a Tusken Raider, pictures of stormtroopers, I think a picture of Darth Vader, and it was about this movie coming out soon that was Star Wars. And my dad handed it to me and said, "This seems like something you would be interested in." And the trailer wasn't out yet. It was even before that. And it was like literally Charlie Lippincott handed these out to people at a some science fiction convention in New York, New Jersey in the 70s, in 76, trying to get people excited about Star Wars. But I remembered that forever, and then saw the trailer and was very excited to see the movie. But all that said, it was mostly Star Trek sci-fi conventions. Then I moved out here, and my brother-in-law was more of a comic book guy than I was. I was a big comic book fan, but I wasn't as focused on it. I've never been a big superhero guy. Whereas he grew up like idolizing Robin from Batman 66, which, that's something to work out with the therapist. But that, that's that's a whole other situation. But he was going down to San Diego. He was very excited to attend San Diego Comic-Con in 89, and said, "Hey, why don't you come down?" And we slept on Andy Mangel's Holiday Inn hotel room floor. I don't remember it being 5 days. I'm pretty sure it was not. It was not in the current convention center. It was in a hotel ballroom. And it was not significantly different it was definitely not bigger than the science fiction conventions I'd been to in New Jersey. Like, it was not a celebrity thing. It was not really a movie industry thing yet in 89. It was just getting there. And then I went off and on over the years, again, mostly as a film person. And I have had a pro badge since 1989, which is wild to me. And then I married a wonderful person who had a booth at Comic-Con every year. And Chris, you went to college with Augusta, right? That's the origin story.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
And, my wife's a big nerd, and she was making films at the time and making burlesque costumes and all that. So she had a booth. So I would go down and help her with her booth. And just when she stopped doing that, and we went to one San Diego, I think it was 2013, that was just exhausting. And they're great fun, but they are exhausting. I once called it the Bataan Death March of pop culture. And we're driving away in 2013, and I said, that was great, but I don't think we have to do this every year anymore. Like, it's so expensive, and it wasn't even that expensive then yet. Mm-hmm. The hotels hadn't capped out at we're going to charge you what you'd be charged to stay at Sommeritz, for San Diego, California. Yeah. And then the next year I got an opportunity to write comic books in 2014. And I said, well, we're going every year now. Like where that beautiful future I was imagining where this was no longer a thing I felt compelled to do for my career is now very much a thing that I have to do every single year. And anyone who's listened to me anytime in the last 10 years has heard me say that my entire comic book career comes from a handful of meetings, not just at San Diego, but at the same bar in San Diego at the Hilton Bayfront, which is one of the reasons we have our party there. Let's see. I think Chris popped out for a sec during that.
Yeah,
Chris, are you back?
We lost Chris for a minute.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
I can hear you. I can't see you.
Yeah, I don't know. My
can
camera
you restart
just
your camera?
went out. Yeah. Let me.
Chris is literally the voice in the dark right now. That's funny. I mean the thing that strikes me, having now gone for, again, if it's 2004, it's 22 years like straight basically now, is is how Chris alluded to it earlier about but just how much bigger, how much more crowded it's gotten. Yep. I remember going, in the beginning, we'd go down there and you could wander into anything. I remember like Jeff Smith from Bone doing like a master class and just wandering into it like in the middle of it, and Mike Judge talking Beavis and Butthead like it's half full. I even remember I remember walking in right as the full cast of Breaking Bad is up on the stage, and I just wander in and just find a seat in the back at the end. I remember wandering into Hall H during like massive movie trailer drops and stuff like that, and just being able to kind of wander, and you wandered around and it's like mostly full, but if you wander around a little bit, you're like, oh, is that seat taken? Is that seat taken? You used to be able to just do it, right? That was how it was in 2004. And now cut to 2026, and if you want to get into anything in Hall H, you got to camp out for 2 days, and and if there's a Breaking Bad panel, unless you're sitting outside that hall 6 hours earlier, you're not getting into it. It's crazy. They estimate 500,000 people there this go around, which seems insane. I remember when they used to say 200,000, and my mind was blown by that number. But I watched this happen where it used to be pretty wide open, and then Saturday got really bad, and then but the other days were cool, and then it was Saturday and Sunday were bad, but the other days were cool, and then pretty quickly Thursday and Friday became like Saturday. And now it's Saturday times 10 across the board.
Wednesday preview night is like the only one that's like it's super crowded, but you could still kind of walk around, but it's only for 3 hours. That's it.
Yeah, and that's generally when I do my hanging out on the floor bit. Like that's or I try to walk around. Most of the time I go to the floor. I go straight to Artist Alley, say hello to my friends who are exhibiting in Artist Alley, and then I get the hell out of there if I can at all do that. I felt like I had cracked a certain like code of how to deal with Comic-Con when a day would go by and I would go, oh, I haven't actually gone to the floor today. I've been in panels, I've had lunch with people, I've had meetings with people in various bars and restaurants, but I haven't actually felt the need to walk around the floor. Certainly not for very long, and certainly not, between 11 a.m. and 3 p.m. when it's at its most crazy. But
I think we all kind of figured that out for sure. Like where, like when you you're like, okay, here are the days I'm doing panels. Here are the days that I want to avoid for traffic, and then you kind of dial in, like, okay, I'm gonna be there Wednesday to Saturday morning or Wednesday to Friday morning, right after my panels. I'm gonna maybe stay over, then go to Florida a little bit, then leave. But we're always looking at traffic too. Like, all right, what do I want it to take 2 hours to get home or 6? So that's the other thing.
Yeah. I mean, the hack that I discovered is taking the train down is wonderful.
Sure.
Because I've been there where it's like, okay, well, I can, it'll be like 2.5 hours going down, and then whatever, there's some border mess or something like that, and you have your 6.5 hour trip back. Never again. The train is wonderful, particularly pay a little bit more for like the
business class.
The business class, the upgrade, and just take a load off, and it's a beautiful trip. And
it's usually it's also like the add-on cost is maybe $15. Like it's so I couldn't imagine trying to take that down in regular, because it's just slammed the days of the con. Wednesday it's not so bad, but Thursday through Sunday it's really slammed. But you figure out your ways of navigation and getting to and from your hotel and all of that.
What often happens with the train, and it's not like this every year, but it is often like this, where the first, like the opening of the race season at it's not Santa Anita, right? It's what is the major racetrack that's about halfway between?
Oh, that I don't know off the top of my head.
Yeah. So there's like a world-class horse racing track halfway between LA and I don't know, I can't remember the name of it, but very often, depending on the day you're going down, like if you're trying to get down there on Saturday, like the opening of the race season will be on that Saturday, and so the train is not just flooded with comic book nerds who are going down for Comic-Con. It is, slammed with people who are dressed like they're going to the Kentucky Derby, bunch of fucking hats, and Miami Vice, white jackets, and
it's just
wads of cash.
It's a different form of cosplay, really. Is all it is. It's Scarlett O'Hara cosplay.
They're getting on a train at 9 a.m. and they are fucking hammered already. And the first thing they do is they look for the fucking bar cart. And it's the most insane and wonderful mix of people that I've ever seen. So
it helps you. It helps you win when you're drunk, when you gamble. So that's
the beauty of going the business class, though, is like you have you're in this like assigned seat situation where you're not you're not really contending with a lot of that stuff, right? You're not you're not.
And there's free terrible coffee and free terrible Danish, which is pretty good.
Well,
and if you're on the morning. If you're on the morning side, you can grab a free LA Times also, which is nice.
Well, nice. And I will often like this go round, I have stuff Friday morning, and so but I can't get out of the city too early on Thursday, so I will train down there on Thursday night. Wonderful ride, off peak, not slammed, and then if that's the way you go, then you get free terrible wine instead of free terrible coffee.
Yes.
It's not my bag. I'm not a drinker.
The last time they kept giving me the terrible Woodbridge wine.
Yeah.
I can't remember why. I think the compartment was empty and the steward was just like, here, have 5 of these damn things. Like, okay, man. And I think I brought them home and cooked with that wine because you can't drink it. Like it's not really drinkable, but I think I made an acceptable marinade out of it.
Well, maybe the steward figured that out. Like, I can't take this wine home and drink it anymore. Let me give it to the guests.
It's really good. Like if you have old metal figurines, it's really good for taking paint
also
off.
good for stripping paint. It's good for stripping paint. But it's a.
Well, you guys have sold me on the train. Everything from drunk horse racing attendees to paint thinner wine.
Yeah. It's. I have to say, it's even awesome. Better.
Seriously, it's good. Yeah, go ahead.
Partially because of the traffic, and also because of things that are specific, excuse me, about that convention. The train is really great for WonderCon. I took that for the first time this year, and it's just because it dumps you off at Angels Stadium. There's a bus that I think is $2 that takes you to the convention center, and I think the lift was $5. Like it wasn't that big a deal. I think I literally took a lift because I didn't have exact change for the bus and I didn't know how to get it at that point.
Because that is often the worst part about going to WonderCon is the parking. There are days that at WonderCon where you can ride right up to the state. You can ride right up to the convention center at WonderCon and just park there, and it's like $20. So that's not too bad. But it didn't used to be that way, because I remember you and I having a panel. Yeah. And I remember I was late for the panel. I had gotten there really early, but I could not find a place to park, and I ended up having to park so far out that I was like running in to make the panel. And so you're waiting on me. I pop up on stage, and everybody's looking at me like I'm insane, and I'm like, "Hey, sorry, I actually got here last night, but I just finally found parking." And like that got like a roar from the crowd because they all understood.
Well, you're at the mercy of the amusement parks and WonderCon. That's the problem. Like you're literally parking in Disneyland parking lots, and it's like, good luck with that, man. Good luck. Yeah, I'm in Beast or Beauty. I can't remember. I'm in one of those two lots. I mean, I think that's one of the few cons. Like it's an hour from Los Angeles. I have stayed in hotel rooms there just for the free parking space that comes with the hotel room. Like that made it worth it to be able to just dump the car at the hotel. But yeah, it's a ridiculous thing to navigate, and the coming and going to San Diego is a big part of what makes it a ridiculous thing to navigate. I've always wanted to stay at the Hotel Del Coronado and take the ferry over and back. But the problem with the ferry is there's no red eye on the ferry. Like you can't stumble out of the Hilton at 2 a.m. and go, "Hey man, can I get a boat across the bay?" That would be terrific.
So one of the years, I can't remember if it was that Walking Dead year or if it was the next year, but we stayed at the production company paid for everybody to stay at the Hotel Del. It had to be 2005 because 2004 we went down. We stayed in the Gas Lamp, and it was the director who's like, "I'm never doing this again. Next year, next year, put us up at the Del," and he had his family there and everything. So we were at the Del, and it was back when you could park. You could actually park down at Comic-Con because it used to be $10, and you were like a stone's throw away. And then the next year it was 20, then it was 25, then it was 30, and now it's like $100 to park, in the city of San Diego, anywhere.
Oh yeah.
Before you go. But so we stayed at the Del. We just drove a car over, basically like parked next to the Comic-Con and walked over. What that did lead to, I was not in the car, but the gentleman who drove over did mushrooms and then had to drive back over there. and still to this day, he says it was one of the most harrowing things that he's ever been through. So if you're a mushroom guy,
makes sense. Well, I hear you guys, especially about parking. Then when you add the fact that you're unloading for a table and ordering and stuff, that brings a whole nother lovely logistical aspect to it. And I always they have a shuttle system for San Diego Comic-Con, and I've used it before, but honestly, the walkable hotels make everything 1,000 times easier, even whether you're, a vendor or not. Although I'm finding that like the vendor badge, if you get there early, you go around the back, there's a contractor entrance that you can use as a vendor. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this dumps you right out at Small Press. I think we felt like we won the lottery at that point when we were setting up at Small Press. I'm like, I'm going to remember this every single time. But speaking of lottery, I mean, that's how crazy San Diego is. To get a hotel, it's literally a lottery, and you're never sure where you're going to get. And every section has a different one. You have like a vendor lottery, then you have a regular attendee lottery, and you're never sure where exactly you're going to be, but we luckily, we were walkable before. We got walkable again as a vendor, but it's much easier. I mean, they try to make it as easy as possible with the shuttle buses and stuff, but when you're stuck and you're tired, you just
It's
want
a
to
lot.
walk back to your room.
Yeah.
You don't want to have to wait for a bus and then walk over to the bridge to get it, and it's it's
I
worth a
will.
little extra upcharge.
I will say though, the year that I discovered the pedestrian bridge over by Petco Park, like
Yes.
having to cross. Now they've closed down traffic on Harbor Boulevard. It used to be it was open for traffic the entire con,
Yeah.
and you would just be standing there with 20,000 people waiting at a crosswalk, and that is just
Yes.
I am not that big a guy on crowds, and that was just too much for me. But the pedestrian bridge is great, and it leaves me off at my favorite bar. So that's a win-win for me.
Well, the buses used to be able to get you right at the gates after panels. Now they don't. You have to walk over the bridge just to get the shuttles now.
But
I got to ask, what's your favorite bar? Which one over
the
the
Odyssey bar at the Hilton? That's the one that my
course,
entire
yeah.
career comes out of. And no, I've never once stayed at the Bayfront Hilton during Comic-Con. I've actually vacationed there once on off season, but I've never stayed. One year I was a presenter at the Eisners, and I really hoped I could turn that into, you don't want me to be all tired, do you? Give me a room at the Hilton. But that very much did not work. I was hoping that would continue, but I did not get asked back. But it was still that was a peak experience. And
at the awards or at the Hilton?
At the awards, it was to do that. I was presenting with Eastman. They asked me, and I said, sure, I'd love to. And I mentioned it to Kevin, and he was like, I'll do it with you. And I was like, that would be awesome. Because otherwise they would have just, and that's fine. I'd be happy with whoever they had put me with, but it being my partner definitely made it more special. I mean, and I think
cool.
to get away from talking about all of the logistics of it all, the last bunch of years I've been averaging 7 panels.
Wow.
Which is insane. And people always like, oh my God, that's so much. And I'm like, 2016, I had my first panel ever at the con. And it meant so much to me to have it and to get the goofy little placard. I saw someone, I won't name names, but I saw someone who I think of as an accomplished comic book industry professional who was doing her first panel at San Diego. And she's like, I really hope I get one of those little placards. I'll have it framed. And I thought, I have 50 of those.
Yeah.
And how great more actually, 7 a year for, 10 years gets into a lot of placards. But
I mean, that's more than one a day. So you do multiple panels in a day.
Yeah. I have 3 on the Friday.
Wow.
And none on Thursday, but 3 on Friday. And then a signing on Friday. And then I have 1 on Saturday. And then I'm running away. Then I'm going home. I actually said no to 3 panels. I think I have 5 this time, and I said no to 3 that were Saturday afternoon through Sunday morning, because I promised my wife I cut back a little bit on the thing. But I do want to talk about that it's such a special experience, and it's not just being in a place where pretty much all of your colleagues are going to be. 99% of your colleagues that you work with in comics and in film are going to be down there. Sometimes it gets ridiculous. A friend of mine was trying to, and this is decades ago, was trying to get together a big dinner, and it was all people who lived in LA. And I was like, I don't need to go out to dinner with all you people who live in LA. We could do this in LA. I'd like to maybe have a drink with my colleagues who live in New York and London and Rome and see them. Because they're the ones that I don't get to see all the time, and to be surrounded by, it's easy to get cynical about the fans. It's easy to get cynical about the giant crush of people and their giant cosplays knocking you over when they turn to the left and all of that. But ultimately, I have too strong a memory of being one of those guys, I was going through some old pictures and found the pictures of me at a Star Trek con, must have been 82 or 83, in my Admiral Kirk uniform that my mother and I had made after Star Trek Wrath of Khan came out. I really liked those uniforms. There was no such thing as cosplay manufacture right now, at that time in the 80s. Like Sears, when Star Trek took off in syndication, Sears made a short sleeve Star Trek shirt, and you could get it in gold, blue, or red. But it was short sleeve, man. What the fuck? You know,
there's such a psychology to the Star Trek cosplay one chooses, right? And so so you could be like, oh, I feel an affinity for the Klingons, I feel affinity for Data, whatever like that. But often the most interesting thing is what rank does this person assign themselves, right?
Oh, absolutely.
And you know, the people walking around like ensigns and generic, you know, Lieutenant JGs
I'm always like, dream bigger.
Yeah. Avalone makes himself an admiral just right off the bat.
Yeah.
Love it.
Yeah. Well, I remember, you know, I remember I'm a lifelong, I mean, I think I first watched Star Trek when I was 6 or 7 years old. And I'm a lifelong Captain Kirk, Admiral Kirk fan. To the degree, I remember when social media used to be all these like quizzes, like which character from blank are you? And there was a which character from Star Trek quiz are you going around? And I remember posting
the Harvest Password era. Is that what?
Yeah, exactly. And it's one of the, I remember posting, I'm so Captain Kirk that I don't need to take a quiz to tell me that I'm Captain Kirk, which is the least Captain Kirk thing in the world would be taking a quiz to confirm that you are in fact Captain Kirk.
It's really funny. I mean, so I was always a captain. You know, when I had didn't have much of a cosplay, but I'd have a T-shirt and I would have the 4 ranks on there, and because you know I'm not gonna step onto any ship unless I'm running it. Like that is very much me. But also, if you try to promote me and take my ship away, I'm the guy that you're gonna have to send fucking an entire security unit in there to physically remove me from the fucking bridge. Because I would definitely be that guy. It's like, you know, hey,
this is my ship. Yeah,
we want to make your admiral. Fuck you.
Yeah.
I'm not going behind the desk. Eat shit. Yeah. So that's
no,
that's
it does. You know, this is formative stuff. You know, though I was 4 years old when Star Trek went off the air originally, and I think I watched some of it in its original run. And as a 4-year-old, I thought it was terrifying. Like the costumes and the makeup and all, like there were enough monsters on it that I thought Star Trek was scary. And then when I was 7 or 8, it was in reruns and I started watching it, you know, 5 hours a week because it was on at 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock. You get home from school and watch Star Trek. And the build of that fandom, like to see it in real time. And, you know, and the thing that I remember even clocking, even then, even in the 70s, when I would meet other Star Trek fans, it struck me, Star Trek fandom has always been very female, actually. And because of the hostility in nerd circles and the misogyny in nerd circles, it took a long time for that to even up in the con world. And of all of the like positive changes in the world that I'm most happy about, the fact that conventions are no longer even remotely overwhelmingly white male dudes, I think is a wonderful, wonderful thing.
Well, I remember when you
express themselves that way and express their cosplay is a beautiful, beautiful thing.
Well, absolutely. And we've kind of seen the full circle of that. Like, you know, when fandom and nerddom was never, you know, when it started off, like it was very rare. I won't say never, but it was very rare that it was toxic. And that kind of like evolved as it grew. And now I think we're seeing it going in the other direction, which is a good thing. Mostly, if you don't count a large part of social media. But yeah, I get what you're saying.
Yeah. No, I always point out, like when The Last Jedi came out and there was all that crazy resistance to it, I'm old enough to remember the letters to the editor of Starlog about how shitty The Empire Strikes Back was. And it was all the same, pretty much the same complaints that you got with The Last Jedi. But the only difference in the culture is that back then, the only way for chuds to express that was a letter to the editor of Starlog magazine. And
that was the only outlet. Yeah.
Yeah. And it would be, 3 letters in one issue. And that was it for Toxic Fandom. Like, you'd never see or hear from those guys again. And
well, that brings up a really good point, because letter writing campaigns, it was a double-edged sword. I mean, that's literally what saved Star Trek. It's like there was no posting or anything. It was a letter writing campaign that that our
organized by a woman named Bijo Trimble.
Wait, you had to use the mail and send things in, and then it got read by what? Yeah, it's
and that was a lot more high effort than typing some angry words and hitting send on a computer and not even using your real name.
It was a gentler time, David.
Yeah, in some ways, yeah. But yeah, so that watching that shift in conventions has been kind of a beautiful thing, and watching them become more inclusive over the years, because that's the thing, the reason Mary Sue became a cliche is because of Star Trek, but one of the secret things hiding in the designation Mary Sue is that the people who cared enough about Star Trek to write fan fiction about it were women. So the self-insert character, Ensign Mary Sue, is a woman, not a man. It's not Ensign Tom, it's not Ensign Bob. The person who wants to write about their adventures on the Starship Enterprise in 1975 and send it into a magazine is a young girl, is a woman, and some of the first novels were written by women.
The guy would have made himself an admiral. That's the problem.
There is definitely that. But yeah, it's seeing that change has been very positive, even with all the negative stuff that comes with. And I remember I was walking along the backside of the convention center along the Hall H line with a comic book creator and his wife, who I will not name. We are no longer friends. But he started mocking the people waiting in line for Hall H. And I was kind of like, these people bought your house, man. Like, how dare you? Like, they want to do this thing. We're both too old to sleep outdoors to see an Avengers movie trailer. And I get that. That's true. I am not that guy. But God bless them for caring enough. And we need the people who care enough to do that. We live and die by the fact that someone cares enough.
It makes the whole world go. I mean, the reason LeBron James, makes $50 million a year and whatever he endorses turns to gold is because regularly 20,000 people pile into a stadium and cheer their heads off, when he dunks a basketball.
Art doesn't succeed. Yeah, art doesn't succeed in a vacuum. It can be created, but it will not succeed in a vacuum.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Yeah. It's funny. It may sound off topic, but Saturday, me and my wife went to see a weird event at the Hollywood Bowl, put on by the Criterion Channel, which was music from the films of Wes Anderson. And it was the kind of thing you would only get in Los Angeles, where everyone is already here, because it was like Jackson Browne and Bill Murray and Jeff Goldblum and Beck. It was a crazy assortment and the LA Philharmonic and Mark Mothersbaugh, and it was everyone you could imagine. And there was a ton of cosplay. And I walked around, a bunch of people in Team Zissou blue, and a bunch of people in Tannenbaum tracksuits, and a bunch of people in, Fox costumes from Fantastic Mr. Fox. And I just went, cool. We're at a Wes Anderson convention. The world is big enough that you can fill a giant, one of the world's largest outdoor music venues with people who love this one filmmaker enough that we're not talking about teenagers. They're people in their 50s and 60s in cosplay. to see Wes Anderson. And it was sort of like
and specifically his music, not even like his movies. They like the movies enough that we're going to just go to a convention with his music.
And it also, it was a good reminder that, like, unlike some other filmmakers that I could name, the music was incredibly eclectic across a wild assortment of, I mean, music from the films of Martin Scorsese would be a Rolling Stones concert. Like there's not that much to go with. Like, you know, maybe, you know, Dragon Kundun, and you've suddenly got something interesting. You got some Philip Glass, but like the music from all of Wes Anderson's films, there's some through lines, but particularly his needle drops, and I'm not a fan of needle drops, are so all over the place. You know, there was a champion Japanese koto drummer there to play music from Isle of Dogs. Right. There was a Ukrainian orchestra there to play the music from Grand Budapest Hotel. There's an instrument I love called the cymbalum, which is very big in Eastern European music. I've never seen one played live before. They had a cymbalum on stage and Japanese drums. You know, like that really, it was such an interesting group and it was such an interesting experience, but it was ultimately a kind of Comic-Con for people who just happened to be moved by a very different thing than comic books.
And you make a good point too, because his movies, you know, run the gamut of everything from stop motion animation to, you know, crime drama, you know, bizarre crime dramas to, you know, relationship dramas. And you know, he has a very eclectic range. And, you know, I can see like, and even like coming of age dramas, like, you know, Moonrise Kingdom and all. And I think if you were going to pick somebody for that specific event, I think that was an excellent choice with Wes Anderson, because there's a little bit of everything, and it creates a dynamic show. I mean, I went to see John Williams, you know, live at the Hollywood Bowl. Great, but again, a lot of the same type of music and the same type of films.
No, I love John Williams, and I've seen that particular concert at least 4 times. I think that's the thing that has got me to go back to the Hollywood Bowl more often than not is to see John Williams conduct. I don't think I'm going to make it to one this year, but it's a great experience. But as you say, it's very different from, you know, and here's an Argentinian pop star to do that one song from that one movie that has nothing to do with the rest of the music we're presenting tonight, like aggressively nothing. Of course, we had 3 women in their 20s in front of us. And when Bill Murray shuffled out to introduce it, one of them did say, "Who's Bill Murray?" And the other one, this is my favorite, said, "He's Garfield."
Oh, wow.
Of all the things Bill Murray probably never has wanted to hear in his entire life, who's Bill Murray? He's Garfield. But yeah,
I would have think he would have gotten at least Ghostbusters at that time.
Oh no, no, these kids weren't alive when Ghostbusters came out, and you know. Now it's cameos in Ghostbusters Frozen Kingdom, which I don't think these 20-year-old girls had seen. No, I never caught what was there in to Wes Anderson. Like, did they jump on at Fantastic Mr. Fox? Did they jump on, like, I don't think they were old enough for Rushmore or Royal Tenenbaums. They didn't know, you know, Bill Murray was. They hadn't seen any of the earlier movies.
Board and comp tickets, maybe.
Yeah, I was going to say,
no, but they were very.
What agency do they answer phones at?
But no, they stayed throughout the whole concert and enjoyed all of the music, which was impressive in its way. But yeah, no, I mean, for all I know, they're Beck fans who were there to see the 4 numbers that Beck did. I don't think they were Jackson Browne fans.
I think, I mean, I think like the God.
No, I was just gonna. But all that to say that like these gatherings of affinity groups are so recharging. As much as I am ever like, you know, I don't go to as many cons a year as my friend Richard, but I go to a lot of cons, and sometimes there is a sense of like, I got to do this again. But no matter how strong that feeling was on the bus or the train or the plane or sitting in traffic on the 5, the first time I step out onto the floor and look over and see Captain America and look over and see some anime thing I do not recognize, I do feel a sense of these are my people, you know, for better or worse. This is the community that I've been a part of since I was a kid. And that community has gone all over the place, and it's changed and it's grown. And there have been events like Star Wars, like the success of the Marvel Universe, that brought in a lot of new people. I still have that feeling when I'm out in public and I see some 30-year-old guy with a Jack Kirby t-shirt on because it's something from one of the more recent Marvel movies. That blows my mind that that guy's out there walking around a Costco, you know, that it's that common, because it was not that common for many, 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 many years. And remembering all of the places that this stuff reaches into, and that anything
too,
and that anything can be someone's first. Someone can be going to that con because they like Supernatural. Someone can be going to that con because they like the Twilight books or the movies. Someone there's no, you know, that there's no limit to it. There's no, people try to gatekeep this stuff all the time. Augusta, who is, you know, a comic book reader, as am I, but she was in the middle of, she was looking at a Captain Marvel mug, and she had a moment, and I said, no, I'll buy it for you. It's a great mug. And she said, yeah, but I've never read the comics. And then she went, oh my God, I'm gatekeeping myself. Like, I don't think I should own a Captain Marvel mug because I've only seen the Brie Larson movie. And I said, Carol Danvers was introduced in a Fantastic Four issue in the 60s. There, now you know more than the average guy that's going to gatekeep you about Captain Marvel. So she was a security officer on an Air Force base in a Fantastic Four issue. Moving
was
on.
she worried about drinking out of? Was she worried about drinking out of the mug in a public place and someone confronting her and quizzing her?
I doubt it. I think it was just like her own internal nerdity.
Perhaps she was worried that the mug was made before 1985, and then
and would have lead.
But to me, it is church.
Yeah.
Right. It is a collection of people who have been moved by something. You know, something, a force greater than us, whatever you want to call it. And and here's the thing about I've never had a lot of luck with churches. I can walk into St. Patrick's Cathedral, and I can look at the enormity of it and the beauty of this artistic achievement that happened, and I can feel what you're supposed to feel, if you want to call it God, the universe, whatever. I feel that there. The moment that a guy in a costume gets up and starts telling you how it is and starts telling you that his way is the only way forward, the only way to the promised land, then I tune out, right? It's not for me. You got a gatekeeper standing up there, guarding heaven, or guarding connection to everything else. And I don't like it. But it's like, but yeah, I mean, I'm stuck back on that successful creator, like, you know, railing on fans, because it's what we all hope for. It's the reward that you move somebody, that somebody sees your work. And my favorite part of every Comic-Con, and we'll come back after Comic-Con and we'll have this, is that over the course of the 4 days, it might just be one person. Sometimes it's 10 people, but there will be one person who will find me. And a lot of times he has gone out of his way to find me. He's tracked me down. He talked to Steve Prince, and Steve Prince told him that I would be here at this specific time. And this guy will come up to me with tears in his eyes, and he will hug me the moment he sees me. And he will say, hey man, I am a veteran. Aberrant meant so much to me. You got us right. You took the time to get us right. Aberrant is the first book I ever wrote. I wrote it before I even knew how to do this. There are a million things I would change about it now, but I was dealing with something and I dealt with it here. Right. It is about loss. You know, my dad died of cancer caused by Agent Orange exposure in Vietnam. I just had I mean, it continues on. I just had my cousin had some horrible years in the Marine Corps and just took his own life. My uncle was an explosives expert in the Army. When he got out of the Army, the only thing he could do is play with explosives. He ends up dying of lung cancer because of years of inhaling whatever you inhale after you deal with a lot of explosives. I know military families. I know the loss that everybody deals with. Sometimes when people are still around, it's even worse because somebody is a shell of themselves and you have to deal with that. I poured all of that into Aberrant, into a stupid fucking superhero book. But I did it honest and I did it right. And it was important for me to do it. And I found closure with some of the stuff I was dealing with this book. I sent that book out into the world, and not nearly as many people have read it as probably this guy you're talking about. I would not fill Hall H with Aberrant fans. But man, you know, once every San Diego Comic-Con, a veteran comes up to me with tears in his eyes and said, "This book got me through something." And
But
that's the only reason I do this.
They feel the sincerity in the writing. Yeah. And the fact that you poured all of that in there onto the page, more of it comes through even than you think. And whatever you're going through, it's completely relatable, you know, when you put your heart and soul. If you're writing cynically, it comes off cynically. If you're writing sincerely with how you're feeling and what you want to say, it resonates. Now, and as artists and writers, you know, we wouldn't change that for the world. I mean, that's really what we want to do.
Well, yeah, and when I was a kid growing up in a housing project in Detroit, going through hell, like stuff like this, you know, got me through it. It was comic books, it was Star Trek, it was Cheers, it was, you know, it was that was how I learned to be a man. That was how I learned right from wrong. That was when I learned what love looked like. That was everything. And so again, that was these people reached out and they gave that to me. And it is, you know, if you look at it psychologically, it is no coincidence that I grew up and I created things to send out, you know, into the world for people. And that's what these cons are. These cons are people who they needed something, right? There was something missing in their lives and they found it in fucking Supernatural, or they found it in Aberrant, or they found it in Alpha Cat, or they found it in Elvira, or whatever. And they are there to celebrate that. And the people that want to pit fandoms against each other are awful, and the people that want to belittle any fandom are awful. But it's like we can all come together based on that, right? It's like, well, we had this hole in us that was filled by fucking Howard the Duck, right? Or whatever. And like that is a universal formula for sanity and for love and for peace of mind. The variables can be different. And we want to make fun of people's variables sometimes, but that's what going to this con reminds me of is
and look, they all
100%. And like, you know, it's interesting because Rylan, I know you say you don't have a table. I mean, to actually somebody really seeks you out to find where you are. I mean, that's even more impressive because you're not on a list anywhere.
There's an artist
you have to stalk me, essentially.
Yes.
Last year it was my 60th birthday. This dude drew Elvira wishing me a happy birthday. Amazing. Framed behind glass, and came to the really party at the Hilton to give it to me. Like, and I don't know if he drove to the con or had to get on a plane with the goddamn thing or whatever, but the effort that this absolute complete stranger took to draw me a birthday present of me and Elvira and then drag it to San Diego so he could hand it to me in person is really an incredible thing. And it's, you don't get over that. You know, I think the highlight of my career so far is that Troy Little, who draws the RAGDOLLS comic that I write with, that I co-created with Eastman, went to some con. He lives out in the far eastern end of Canada. And he was at some small con in the far eastern end of Canada. Prince Edward Island? Am I getting that right? And
Sounds right.
a little girl came up dressed as one of the Ragdolls, cosplaying. She had made the costume because she knew Troy Little was going to be at that con. And she wanted to express to Troy how much Tezuka of the Ragdolls meant to her. There's one issue of that comic at that time. 32 pages of material about Tezuka that this girl went crazy for.
And this resonated.
6-year-old girl got together with her mother and made a fairly complicated costume of a little
because
samurai
it's
cat girl.
I was going to say it's a cat, a samurai, and a uniform. So it's all of those things
there's a
together.
lot going on in the Tezuka costume, and she did it. There's a guy, I can't remember where he lives, who makes paper sculptures, and he made all 3 of the Ragdolls out of paper and sent them to me. There's a guy who's a big Eastman super fan who paints skateboard decks. He walked up to me after a panel once and handed me a Miyazaki skateboard deck.
Oh, that's
I think
cool.
Eastman got the Tezuka and Ben Bishop got the Otomo skateboard decks. I got the Miyazaki, which is great. I love Miyazaki. But that level of care and love, and I want to show the person that created this, that this thing meant something to me. I mean, I do it in a small way. I had a concern when I started writing Elvira and Bettie Page both about who the audience was going to be, because they're hot ladies. And I did not want to write a comic just for horny middle-aged dudes. I'm not interested. I was not interested in the aesthetics that I would have to be satisfying for that. So I used to do this thing where I would go on Instagram when I had a new issue of Betty or Elvira, and I would name search for hashtag Elvira, hashtag Elvira Mistress of the Dark, hashtag Bettie Page. And it always made me relax because I never really saw the dudes in the trench coats posting about the comics. The Bettie Page was always some girl with tattoos and bangs holding up the comic, some teenage girl going, this is radical, this is fantastic. You know, like the Elvira goths, endless bouffanted goths holding up Elvira comics, but that it was primarily women. Now it's self-selecting. Instagram is more female platform, probably. Like, I'm sure there's some Reddit thread about how sexy those comics are or whatever. But at least in public-facing Instagram, what I saw was the fans of this thing are aspirationally girls who want to grow up to be Elvira or Bettie Page and who share their positive qualities. And in both characters, I couldn't write them until I figured out what those qualities were and how to reflect them. And what was heroic about Bettie Page, the real Bettie Page, and what's heroic about Elvira and about Cassandra Peterson, who plays her. And that's the thing you're writing to. And related also to the take it seriously thing. You know, that is the ultimate job you have, whether it's something of your own creation or taking on someone else's IP. You have to take it seriously and go, what about this makes it good? Someone asked me the other day on, I think it was Bluesky, if my dad wrote any sleaze novels in the 50s under a pseudonym. And I said, no, the funniest thing about my dad is he is the only guy who put his own name
Yes, because he
on
put
his
all his name.
sleaze novels from the 50s. Like he wrote Lust at Leisure and The Doctor's Wife and Sinners in White, which was about
one of
nurses.
my favorites. One of my favorites. Yep.
And Women in Prison, literally just women in prison. Huge, hard to get that one. Very popular book on eBay. But he put his names on them because he wrote great novels that just happen to have a lot of sex in them, you know, and he believed in those books and he put his name on them because he was not ashamed of them. He used to say, I never wrote a book I didn't like. And
so he never felt the pressure of like, well, I don't really want to write this, but I'm going to do it anyway. He was into everything he wrote.
he found a way. Ryland's heard me tell this story, but I'll tell it in the shortest possible way. He wrote the novelization of Friday the 13th Part 3. He was not excited to write the novelization of Friday the 13th Part 3 for a lot of reasons. Not his kind of movie.
Right.
But he took I was there when he started writing the book. I was watching TV in the living room. He took the script into his study, hour of silence, and then I start hearing typewriter keys. And he comes up an hour later with pages in his hand. And he said, I want you to read this. I'm doing something really great with Jason here. And I just thought, you already love it. Like, it's garbage. The screenplay is fucking garbage. And you are already very excited to write this book because you're doing something interesting with Jason by page 5. And I think that's the gig.
Yeah.
If you can't get past that, if you can't find the way to put yourself in it, to find something about Jason, to find something about Bettie Page that you think is heroic and admirable while you're writing heroic fiction about her, don't do it.
Yeah,
you know?
and it's something that I've said a couple of times on here too, where it's like, I mean, here's the thing: is I'm not a stranger to doing gigs that I'm not excited about. I polished turds in Hollywood for 20 years, so and made made some really bad movies slightly more tolerable, and made some good movies a little bit better or whatever. So your heart's not always in it, but I was always a little more selective when it came to the comics, like a lot of times, because it was a bandwidth issue, right? But have had a little more bandwidth recently, if you've been following my my social media, but not so much anymore. But I was always like, man, I don't, because I had, you write a couple of good comics and people start knocking on the door, and you got this editor offering you an arc on this and whatnot, and I was always like, man, I don't know. And you and I were close, AVALLONE, and I was like, I don't know what I would do with ELVIRA. Like, I don't know if I could write that. And then I really dug in to your ELVIRA, and I saw how it was very much ELVIRA, but it was very much you. And I saw how much fun you were having writing ELVIRA.
Thank you.
And I'm like, I get it. Like, he's having a blast, and he found his zen with this thing, and I'm like, I understand. Like, you could give me ELVIRA tomorrow, and I would, I don't think I do as good a job as you do writing it, but I could write it, and I would have fun writing it, and people would enjoy reading it. And so whatever that is, name a character. But it did help me. It did help me when I picked up Evel Knievel. It's like, well, I always would have been okay writing Evel Knievel, but that study of how do you write one of these things well was very important and very formative. And I think
thank you.
If I had written Evel Knievel before that study, I would have written it very differently than I ended up writing it, and it wouldn't have been nearly as good.
Well, you find ways to bring yourself into it. Go ahead, Chris.
Oh, I was going to say, yeah, I have my first job as a union writer was actually on a soap opera. Like, that was, I was a temporary employee fixing computers in the head writer's office. And I said, by the way, are you looking for scripts? And she's like, we're always looking for writers, because soap operas are literally every day. And so I sent her a Grace Under Fire spec, if you remember that show.
Wow. And, nicely done.
Yeah, and she read it, she liked it, she's like, all right, we're gonna put you on a trial basis. And so I was still doing tech support and working as a writer on the show until someone from New York and ABC said, why are we paying him twice? So so I lost the support job, but then I was on the writer, and the head writer said to me just what you guys are saying. Look, it's a soap opera, but I want your voice to be in every script you write. I want to be able to read the script without seeing your name on it and knowing that it's yours. And I said, okay. So I put myself into every script with these characters, and pulled on my own experiences. And it was Port Charles, so it was actually a spinoff of General Hospital, and and it got very weird and serial killery, but it was fun, and I enjoyed it. And She left, and then the executive producer brought me into the office and said, "Look, your writing has a very distinct voice." And I'm thinking, great. And then she goes, "We just don't want to hear it." And and they did not renew my contract. So I got fired for the same reason I was hired, to actually be
Amazing.
that like creative voice. So, but it's very satisfying, and I totally hear what both you guys are saying, and it's very true. No matter what you're working on, you find a way to put yourself in it, you're going to enjoy it every single time.
Yeah. And it also, honestly, not for nothing, it does have the benefit of, if you're a fan of someone, it's a flavor that you want every time you sit down to a meal that they have prepared. So taking your voice out of it, I would like to think that if they gave me Spider-Man tomorrow, that people who read Elvira would read the Spider-Man and go, "That's the stuff. That's the stuff I like." That's because it's very, obviously when I'm writing Elvira, it's very different from when I'm writing Zorro. Or when I'm writing John Carter of Mars, or when I'm writing Tarzan. But there's a degree of worldview, sense of humor, even plotting, I'd like to think, that people can go, "Oh yeah, this is the thing I like. The engine running this is the thing I like." And to bring it back to Comic-Cons, that's the high you're chasing when you follow an artist. It's sort of like, it's harder for people to be fans of. There are artists who are great at what they do who are a little bit invisible and without voice. And it's much harder. Like, it's hard. Robert Wise will never be as beloved as Federico Fellini, because when you watch the Andromeda Strain and you watch West Side Story, it's very hard to go, "Oh yeah, that's the guy. That's it. That's the thing I like." Now, as a student of filmmaking, there are things I can see in the approach to both of those things that are the same. Also significant that we're not talking, that's not a writer. That's a creator of images, which is a somewhat different job. But a writer that vanishes too much risks not having a voice. And when you don't have a voice, it's much harder for fans to like clamp onto that and go, "This is the stuff. This is what I came for. This is the feeling I want." I mean, we were talking about Wes Anderson earlier. His films are very diverse. They're very different plots. They're very different characters, but there are enough elements of commonality in all of his movies that you can be a Wes Anderson fan and be just as interested in the movie about the manager of a hotel in the Alps in the interwar period in Europe and the family of a crooked con man in New York City in the late 80s. Like, there's enough of the same perspective there that you can,
and it lives in the characters and the dialogue. You see it.
Exactly. You can get it. And, it's sometimes you can get subsumed by the material and not quite nail it with your voice. Sometimes you're a bad fit for the thing, but I think you always try. You always do your absolute. I mean, the most successful thing in my dad's career, who started as a hard-boiled detective fiction writer, was a series of Partridge Family tie-in books. The thing that sold, the guy who cut his teeth on handguns and fist fights and sexy ladies and film noir, it's like, "I'm going to write some novels about a family of musicians that are touring the country," and yeah, of course, that sold millions of copies because the TV show was a huge success. But he didn't write 10 of them because they didn't sell millions of copies because they didn't match the tone of the TV series. You know what I mean? no one was reading those novels going, these are very dark and violent compared to like these seem like Mickey Spillane wrote these. It's like, no, they did not seem like that at all.
I mean, it's pretty often that a filmmaker can't or a writer can't get out of the way, right? I mean, you know, you look at you watch Jackie Brown and it simultaneously feels like Tarantino and Elmore Leonard. You know, it looks like they came together and they had this wonderful party and we were all invited, and thank God. But you know, Rian Johnson does Star Wars, and there's way too much Rian Johnson in it. Rian Johnson's he's a great, I think he's a great filmmaker, right? Great filmmaker, has done some amazing films, but give him Star Wars and don't give him enough guardrails, and way too often in that movie it doesn't feel like Star Wars, right? And even if it feels like Star Wars for an hour, and then there's a hard left turn where it feels like Rian Johnson and not Star Wars, that becomes problematic. And I think that
I mean, if you hire Rian Johnson, don't be surprised when Rian Johnson shows up. You know, is the whole thing of like, that's, I mean, when you hire him.
But conversely, J.J. Abrams has the opposite problem, where you're like, I'd kind of like someone to do something that's not just Star Wars. Yeah. Like there's no voice that's not, you know, it's, and I always say it's the thing Mandalorian got right, sadly, only in its first season, is if you want to make Star Wars, who you should be referencing is John Ford and Howard Hawks and Akira Kurosawa, not George Lucas. Like the person to imitate is the people that George Lucas was imitating. Not
The Hidden Fortress. What movie's that? And
Wrath of Khan is the same thing. It's a guy who doesn't love Star Trek making that film and writing it, but he loves Horatio Hornblower. He loves the things that Gene Roddenberry was riffing on. So he can't really riff on Gene Roddenberry, but he can riff on the same things that went in. He can riff on Forbidden Planet and Horatio Hornblower and come up with a great naval adventure movie that happens to take place in space. And that's the genius of it.
And it's, I mean, Lucas is a perfect example, because, you know, I mean, when Lucas makes, you know, the first Star Wars movie, you know, he's a different person, and he's blazing this trail. He's creating this. Cut to years later, right? And he is this different guy. He's this like uber rich, you know, obsessed with technology, and he's not hip anymore. He's not, you know, he's not cutting edge. He hasn't had to be. And so you watch those prequel movies, and too often the prequels feel like an old gumpy guy trying to make a sci-fi movie instead of hip, edgy, cool Star Wars, right? And there's like some weird irony in that, where it's like, the prequels, it's too much Lucas and not enough Star Wars. Like, well, you know, like, can you separate the two? I guess you have to, you know, when you come to that. But that's really interesting. I hadn't thought about it that way, but
it is also, you know, especially filmmaking, comics too. But you know, it's a team sport, and the people you're working with bring so much to it. Whenever anybody complains about, oh, that movie was written by a committee, I'm like, I always say 4 people are credited as writing Fellini's 8.5. The Phantom Menace has 1 writer. Committees can be really great if there's a strong vision from the guy sitting in the center seat. If George Lucas had written Phantom Menace with 10 people in the room giving him notes and telling him, no, George, that won't play. That is a wrong turn. Don't do that.
That's a good point. Well, you get to the point where the success point where no one is going to give you notes, and that becomes a big problem too.
And you need your buddies to say. I mean, I just saw Disclosure Day a couple of months ago, and I remember reading somewhere that it had 42 drafts or 70 drafts that David Koepp wrote, and I'm like, maybe someone else should have written a draft, David, because holy shit, that does not seem like a screenplay that had 70 drafts, because there are
a lot of drafts.
Giant. Maybe meant pages. Maybe it just meant pages, not really drafts.
But there are things I would have given notes on in a first draft that are in that final movie, and that's bizarre to me. You know?
Like the 40 minutes of extraneous footage?
Uh, there's just a lot of. I mean, I think if he had made that movie a sequel to Close Encounters of the Third Kind, it would have been a beautiful capstone of his UFO trilogy. Find some young French actor to play Francois Truffaut's son, and go for it. But it's, and again, even voices shift over time. Lucas, if you look, this is such a small thing, but in his first films, in his first films as a director, up until Empire Strikes Back, he has a visceral fascination with voices on radios. THX 1138, Star Wars, and American Graffiti are all dominated by voices coming out of radios and distant voices being heard. If you look at Star Wars compared to The Empire Strikes Back, there's all this radio chatter in Star Wars. The stormtroopers are always talking to one another. Like the minor characters are always kind of chattering to one another in the background. And that just
now
vanishes.
I'm going to look for that. Like I never thought of that. So now I'm going to actually watch these movies again. I'm like, wait,
I first noticed that when they re-released the first series in the 90s and saw Star Wars and then saw Empire Strikes Back. And I was like, oh, there are the little touches of George Lucas avant-garde filmmaker. There's still just a thread of it. There's still a little bit of the robot guards talking to one another in THX 1138 in Star Wars, and then it's gone. And the one that I've talked about many times because I'm endlessly fascinated with it. I'm not a big Robert Altman fan. I love Robert Altman's influence on Steven Spielberg. In Close Encounters,
then you are a Robert Altman fan.
I guess
just in a different way.
In Close Encounters and in Sugarland Express and in Jaws, there's all this like vox populi. There's always the big groups of people chattering at one another and improv dialogue and overlapping dialogue and people interrupting each other. And then he makes his Robert Altman movie. And it's the worst movie he's ever made, 1941. And then he never does that again. Like that feature of his filmmaking, he goes, well, that sucks. We're never doing that again. And Raiders of the Lost Ark has not one shred of Robert Altman in it. There's not a micron of Robert Altman. That's all Howard Hawks and Michael Curtiz. That's all him referencing classical film directors. There's
serials, all that stuff.
Yeah, there's a little John Huston in there. That's, again, like things that drop out. Indiana Jones in the first movie echoes Humphrey Bogart in Treasure of the Sierra Madre just a little bit. He's a little bit of an amoral treasure hunter, and then that becomes too interesting going forward. Like we can't make the guy that interesting. He's our hero. He's got to be, he's got to be more straight in. Anyway, I should wrap this up. It has been lovely talking to you, Chris. Tell us a little bit more about the Kickstarter. How much longer is it running? What can people get?
Absolutely. There's a lot of, well, first I want to give a shout out to Rylan because he helped me set up this entire campaign. It's much appreciated. He was like, you got to do an alt cover. You need all these extra things. And it's made the campaign bigger. It's probably the biggest one we've ever done. And it is Alpha Cat. And speaking of what we've kind of been talking about this whole time, it's basically the influences of what artist Fernando Pinto and I went through when we were younger. Everything from Star Trek to video games like Ratchet and Clank to Star Wars. We kind of wanted to put all of these things in a blender and make this book. And the origin was because we were at cons and people would see the logo for the company. Oh, a cat with a jetpack. Where's his book? I'm like, what are you talking about? Where's it? Well, it's a cat with a jetpack. I would read that. Kids and adults would say that when I was like, we don't have the book. So I talked to Fernando. I said, would you want to make a series of this? He was like, I'm down. So we started going through it and what we wanted to do, what we didn't want to do. And we always thought it would should have that Pixar feel where adults can really enjoy it as well, but it's also kind of kid friendly. So it kind of hits that spot where everyone can kind of like get something out of it. And I've been sending it to people too for reviews. And one of the things that keeps coming back too after podcasts and reviews is like, well, I thought this was a kid's book, but it's not. And I was like, yeah, but there's nothing super offensive in it that, you know, kids can't enjoy about a former soldier becoming an explorer and things stirring up. But it's like we were talking about before, it's Star Trek with animals, but also kind of like, you know, Starship Troopers with cats, and the Kickstarter will go until about first week in August. But there's catch-up tiers if you missed issue 1. There's a great 2001 alternate cover that came out amazing, which we absolutely love. You can get other White Cat Entertainment books like Long Gone Far Away or Rise of the Kung Fu Dragon Master, and you could get, since it's an anthropomorphic book, you can't get drawn into the book, but we can draw your pet into the book. So people have already grabbed those tiers, but there are some left. So you could actually get your pet to join the fight, and so far we've had rabbits and cats, so I'm wondering if there will be something else somebody's going to want to put in the book. But it's really fun. You know, I hate to use the word all ages, but it is a really fun book. So please check out Alpha Cat. It's till the first week in August, and we hope to have you aboard.
Great, fantastic. And
yeah,
Rylan,
second.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, let me second the the Alpha Cat pitch. I was describing it as the book that I desperately wanted as a kid, but maybe couldn't fully grasp and appreciate until I was an adult. I think that was like there's a nice balance to that. You read it when you're young and you get one thing out of it, and you read it when you're older and you get another thing out of it. The thing that keeps on giving. But yeah, highly recommend that. I am at Ryland Grant on all forms of social media. That is RYLENDGRANT. If you are just listening, I spell it because it's not a real name. My parents kind of drunkenly arranged letters and saddled me with it, and so now I have to spell it for you guys. But I will be at San Diego Comic-Con for, I don't know, 3 or 4 days, something like that. I'll be around. I will certainly be at the Bayfront Hilton on Friday evening for our Writer's Block meetup. I have a couple of panels going on. You can still get Evel Knievel #1, which is shipping and people seem to be really loving. You can still, get your late pledges in via Kickstarter. Go over to Kickstarter and do that. Essentially, the entire Half Evil Comics, the award-winning Half Evil Comics catalog is available on that also. So, good way to get your books, but get them signed by me and get other, really interesting kind of art tiers and stuff like that. So go check that out. Yeah, I think that's all I got going. I can't talk about my movies yet, but I'm writing movies again, so I'm feeling pretty good.
We're all going to be on the panel together Friday night at Comic-Con.
Yeah. That's right.
Which will be
I guess we should plug that thing. Check out my.
What is it? 7 o'clock?
Yeah, it's 7 o'clock. Why we make comics. Talking about. I don't know. We've touched on it a little bit, but why we do this, and not just why we do this, but why we have to do this, why we have no choice but to do this, and kind of all the personal stuff that we pour into our books. So we also have Ari Nelson, and we have a really interesting cat, Benjamin Franzen, who spent 18 years in prison for a murder he didn't commit. It was released very recently and wrote a book that won a very prestigious fellowship and is kind of taken.
Nice.
And he will have some interesting things to say about why he had to write to get through the 18 years inside a penitentiary. But bring us on home, Avallone.
No. Yeah. I will not be writing about my time in federal penitentiary anytime soon, but I can be found easily online. I have a very easily Googleable name, but the number one thing I push these days is my Patreon, which has a free subscription level. If you're interested in making comics, I'm writing a book on making comics that is being rolled out very slowly on the Patreon. In stores right now, I have Altered States Warlords issue 2. You can probably go back and find issue 1. Recently released Giant Size Savage Tales, which is a collection of four adventure stories, and I'm writing the last issue of Drawing Blood as we speak. Usually everybody else is the holdup. I'm the holdup this time because I'm really trying to nail this is something I've been working on for almost a decade. I think the first time, I think I came up with the title at San Diego Comic-Con. I was sitting on the balcony at the Bayfront Hilton. Eastman pitched me the project. I thought, if I can come up with a title, I'm going to get this gig. I walked him to his signing at the IDW booth, and as we were walking in the back door, I said, how about drawing blood? And he was like, oh, yeah, man, that's awesome. And now, a decade later, I am finally finishing the story, which is wild stuff. So keep your eyes peeled for all that. Thanks for listening. Hopefully, we will see you in San Diego if you are out there. And have a great week.
If you're watching us on YouTube, be sure to smash that like button. If you're listening to us on Apple Podcasts or other fine purveyors of ear crack, please leave us a 5-star review. And wherever you're watching and or listening, subscribe. We'll see you back here next week for more madcap hijinks on the Writer's Block.